Hey folks, this is Eric from Support Adventure, and this is a video on why we are phasing out our shared help desk service, and why we are focusing on our main offering of full-time dedicated staff moving forward. So yeah, basically, it's been an interesting ride since 2017 when we first got our first after-hour shifts, 24/7 clients, and all that sort of jazz. I was hesitant to get into this space because, well, my life was stressful enough just working UK business hours at the time. But the client I had really wanted it. It gave me the budget to hire somebody for the night shift when I was supposed to be sleeping. And I went on this journey. So the service evolved into a system where MSPs could have access to an on-call service desk team 24/7. Which was about, at its height, 7 people around the world who are taking tickets after hours for the MSPs. So at the height of it, there were about 3 or 4 MSPs on it. And yeah. So the first reason why we're no longer going to be doing this is because, well, the MSPs were not getting good value out of this service because they had occasional needs 24/7. And basically it wasn't worth it. I looked at one contract that lasted for, I guess, about a year and a half. And basically, they were paying like hundreds of British pounds per ticket. I guess they were able to get that back from their client, but the client called so rarely. And they called so rarely. Why would you maintain the service? We collected the money for this, with which we had to actually, maintain the team around the world, maintain the documentation, and put management resources on judging the tickets afterwards. But yeah, all right. The second reason, that takes me to the second reason. There wasn't enough work to actually make the service good. So anybody who's in operations will tell you that you can never get it right all of the time operationally. There's always going to be stuff to be learned with every case, especially when you're piloting something, especially when you're rolling it out, especially when you're training new staff and stuff like that. And on the 24/7 shared help desk, there simply was not enough stuff to do for the staff to get accustomed to the system. So what we did to counteract this was made sort of like training tickets that they had to log into this server on this client. The whole thing functioned so that each client and had their ticketing system and documentation system and RMM, and each technician would have a way through a hosted desktop to log, really convoluted, to log into that ticketing system and RMM. And it was very interesting to put it all together so it worked. And I learned a lot about security, about documentation, about operating procedures like escalation, the wonderful system that is PagerDuty and the possibilities that opens up for escalations and notifications and all that sort of stuff, and ensuring that someone's held accountable for a ticket. So yeah, but there wasn't enough to actually make the service great. And what I would imagine is like 10 tickets or 20 tickets from each MSP every week would have made the service great. And yeah, it just wasn't enough work. And so a lot of the time you would get this ticket coming in and it would get to a technician who, is good at the job. They've been briefed on a lot of the stuff, but then they've never heard of that company and they've never heard of the end user, and they're logging into the documentation. Maybe some of it is incorrect and all that sort of stuff. And it lacks that familiarity that we were so consistently able to deliver by onboarding full-time dedicated staff on stable contracts with MSPs, getting to know their clients. It was management intensive to review the cases afterwards and figure out what could have been done. What could have been done better, and then doing that. The next reason why we're powering it down is we didn't feel that our MSP partners were dedicated enough in improving the service. It was just something that, the sales team or management sort of sold, and the operations team was told they had to onboard, and they didn't really view it as important. And they had this sense that it was going to function just like the daytime thing, but no, when someone doesn't know the systems, you have to provide a lot more documentation. So we designed this client master sheet system, which was a jumping off point into documentation, an index of the existing documentation from the perspective of an after hours service. And that worked quite well, but it still left a lot to be desired. And a lot of the time we would find that the team that was tasked with helping us with build that documentation would cancel calls because something came up. They had to put out fires, and they weren't available to answer questions. They wouldn't answer emails, and they wouldn't get back to us. So the typical understaffed MSP problem basically hit us on this, and we had strict guidelines of the documentation that needed to be done before we went live with the client. And documentation can degrade over time as if nobody's auditing it. So yeah. And overall, I think the main reason why we're not going to do this anymore is because, well, I just don't like the idea of working on these sorts of arrangements that are, small deals. I want to be able to make a drastic difference in MSPs. Now, a lot of people thought that subscribing to the service would be a drastic difference if their staff didn't have to be on call after hours anymore, and that very well might be the case. And we were willing to help them with that. And with our global reach, it didn't really. Yeah, our global reach, it didn't really take much for us to organize it. One guy in Southeast Asia, Europe, and Latin America. And there you go. That's the whole thing. You set it up and you've got someone in their daytime answering the calls all the time. And it functioned really well from a response point of view. But the normal problems that plague MSPs, like documentation, bad escalation procedures, clients being onboarded with stuff that is hard to support because it's legacy software or hardware, and the whole range of MSP issues. So we're no longer doing this service, and what we're offering instead is dedicated after hours. And dedicated after hours means that you will get a person in Asia, a person in Europe, a person in the Americas, and they will be able to cover your out of hours in most cases. You will still have to be the escalation point, the fallback, but we can staff, with 3 or 4 people, if you want some redundancy there, people who are ready to support around the clock. And we expect the MSPs to train them themselves. Usually we can arrange for some sort of daytime overlap for training so that they can be trained on the systems. We expect the MSPs that onboard this have a good idea on how to delegate tasks after hours, and train people on the possible events and what to do in those situations. Because a lot of what comes in after hours is like server down. Oh, look, it healed itself. Well, what do you do in that situation? What do you do if a server goes down and it doesn't come back up? At which point do you notify the team for the morning? Is it 6 a.m.? Is it 7 a.m.? You have to have procedures around all this stuff. And it's very cumbersome. And the security considerations when you have an external provider, we had to actually put in a lot of security steps that MSPs don't put in the daytime. Whether they need to would be a sort of issue of debate. But MSPs know their clients, and the people working for them know their clients. But an after-hours technician certainly won't. So we had to put in lots of procedures around how to verify the person is who they say they are before, resetting that password or giving access to this or that. And ultimately sometimes tell people, no, sorry, we can't verify your identity if you can't answer this number we have on file right now for you. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I learned a lot. I haven't gotten interrupted in my sleep for a long time, this year even. It hasn't happened, but I'm not going to miss it, because the first time, let me tell you a story about the first time when we started this service. Basically, we had a client in London who had a client in the financial industry who had a branch office in Australia. And our client in London, the MSP, had rolled out this hosted desktop based on one of the big hosted desktop providers in the world. And although they had picked the hosted desktop provider servers in Sydney to serve the Australian branch offices with the hosted desktop, it was still dependent on the Office 365 tenant, which was based in the UK. And there were massive issues with Australian internet being able to sync the literally tens of thousands of messages that were on that email. And every day we'd just get calls, it would be midnight here in Europe. And at this point I hadn't gone to Asia yet. So we hadn't staffed over there yet. That came about 6 months later. But we get calls around midnight, 1 a.m. here in Belgrade in Central European time, and basically, have to troubleshoot this thing, which was just not working correctly, and then have to get on calls at 9 in the morning UK time to hand that over to the MSP and tell them how much a disaster troubleshooting this thing was once again. And the MSP owner in London basically said, I've got 83, it was a pilot project, and it was like £83,000 or something proposal to roll out this hosted desktop thing. I was like, sorry, it's not working. And I didn't want to be in the middle of that sort of thing. And if it was daytime, they would have seen a lot quicker that it just, it wasn't a feasible way of doing this. What they wanted to do because of the bad internet in Australia, because of the fact that the staff in Australia really didn't want to use a hosted desktop, and because of the fact that it just didn't work. I can't say it any simpler. And so my first taste of the after-hour service was getting in conversations every day. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Blah, 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 blah. Well, it's because the guy on the night shift doesn't have a crystal ball, unfortunately. Can't contact you in your dreams and ask for advice on the ticket he's trying to solve. It's sad, but that's the truth. And I don't know what else to tell you folks. So I would be open to doing a shared help desk for a couple, really well-defined roles, like supporting specific pieces of hardware with a knowledge base of 25 common issues that you troubleshoot or then escalate, or anything that has a straightforward procedure. But MSP work does not have a straightforward procedure. And when you have your own internal staff dedicated or outsourced dedicated staff, as we offer, then you can mentor them on your approach. They can learn from you. But when you have random stuff going to random technicians at random times of night who are based in random continents, the documentation is always a work in progress. And basically, it might never be great. And it might never give the same results as the daytime help desk. And that's why we're not doing it anymore. And because I want to give that excellence and fit with the company's culture of the MSPs we're sending people to. And I don't want to have to look at these tickets anymore. So thanks a lot for watching this video, and I hope you understand. If you're interested in getting a dedicated team around the world, please write to me or write to us, sales@supportadventure.com, and we'll see if we can help you. And we'll tell you what that looks like. So thanks a lot, and I'll catch you later.